All right, guys. Question 10, I am given the data, -3 all the way to 60. And to find an outlier, I'm going to plug in the data in the calculator, which is going to give me a second. And then to find the outlier, remember that we need a formula for a lower bound and an upper bound. Okay. And the lower bound is Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR. And upper bound will be Q3 minus 1.5 times IQR. Also remember that IQR, the way we calculate it, is Q3 minus Q1. Okay, so I arrange it. So now I'm going to go to the calculator. I already plugged in all my data in. All right, so second, nope, I'm going to go to Stat, Edit. Okay, so all my numbers are already in. I did it ahead of time. I'm going to go back to Stat, go to the 1/, Calc, first version, List Matches. Okay. These are my data. So I can read that my Q1 is 10 and my Q3 is 26. So Q1 is 10, Q3 is 26. So that's all I need from the calculator, okay? Now, I'm going to plug in those numbers here. So for my lower bound, I have Q1, which is 10, minus 1.5 times IQR. Now, what is my IQR? Again, it's my Q3 minus Q1, so 26 minus 10, which is 16. All right, so 16 is the answer for the first one. Now, if you multiply this out, that's going to give you -14. Now, for my upper bound, I have 26 plus 1.5 times 16. And if you put it in the calculator, you should get a 50. Now, how do I read this? Okay, I have an upper range and a lower range here. I mean, backwards, lower range and upper range. So I'm going to look at my data here. I'm going to say, do I have any values in my data that are lower than -14? No, I do not. Do I have any values that are higher than 50? Yes, I do, 60. So my outlier, it's 60. So it will be an answer B, all right? For question 11, again, you're given the data and you ask to find an outlier. All I need is IQR, which again is Q3 minus Q1. So that's 14 minus 8, which is 6. And then I have to calculate the boundaries. Lower bound, which is Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR. So that's, what is my Q1? Q1 is 8 minus 1.5 times 6, which should give me -1. My upper bound is going to be Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. So Q3 in this case is 14. It's going to be plus 1.5 times 6 equals 23. So now I'm going to look at my data. I know that my minimum value is 2, and I know that my maximum value is 30. Okay, now my lower bound is -1. Do I have any values that are lower than -1? No, I don't, because the minimum is 2. Do I have any values that are higher than 23? I do, 24. Okay, because your maximum is 30, and so 24 would be my outlier out of the list of numbers given. All right, question 12. As the result of the common standardized test using psychology, research is designed so the population mean is 130 and the deviation is 20. A subject earns a score of 152. Okay, what is the z-score? So again, z-score is x minus your mean divided by standard deviation. So that is 152 minus your mean, which is 130, divided by 20. It should give you 1.1 as a z-score. All right, question 13. It has the lifespan of the light bulbs is approximately normally distributed. Some statistics about lifespan of 2 different types of light bulbs are listed. Light bulb mean for the LED is 2,300 days, and the standard deviation is 230. Okay. So that's your mean, that's your standard deviation. Now the incandescent bulbs, mean is 100 and standard deviation is 10. and the standard deviation is 10. Now, here it says what proportion of the LED bulbs are expected to burn out before reaching 2070 days. So I'm going to do my curve first. Okay, this is my mean, 2,300. I'm going to add my standard deviation.
We can
All right,
prove that it's
so
not
I'm
any
gonna
of those
draw.
things. And so if all those naturalistic theories
start with
fail,
my value
this
right
is
here
where the Christian can
of
raise
my
it. Well, how about
mean.
another idea?
Well, what's Barry's answer?
Oh, well,
of
he'll just shrug his shoulders. And I think that's fair. Like if you want to be...
It's very Jewish.
Since I'm
No, that is to say, he'll say, I don't know. I don't know.
Disavow.
No, well, he holds out. He says, we can't explain it today.
Okay.
It's not that it's
So-
Sure.
unexplainable.
But this is what the atheists do about the
unexplained.
world.
Yes,
I've just been
exactly.
informed I got the
Minus
wrong
our-
story.
Standard deviation.
Oh, man. Okay, so
Give
go-
her a raise.
At the end of the day,
It's going
more
to
than
be
empiricists. Yes, as a scientist,
2070
qua-scientist,
minus
I'm going to
230
say,
is
I can't explain this.
1,840
But
minus
I'm a
230
man.
is
I have all the
Okay.
all my
So I'm saying what
faculties,
proportion
and
of the
I have
bulbs
to,
are
at the end of the day,
expected to burn out
say
before reaching.
yay or
That's gonna
nay.
be
What
one
do I
standard
think?
deviation
And
from the
there I have to
middle,
take in
right?
all,
So we
all that I
have
know. And I think this is really does bring to the fore
13.5.
the question of the interplay
Sorry about
between faith and reason.
13.5,
It's like reason brings you to the shore,
2.35,
and you've been
0.15.
walking, and now it's
So the
time to
only
swim.
values that we
But
are
it's
gonna
like,
add
how much
okay,
evidence do you need?
are
Like,
anything
if I could
that
just
is
take one
before
element just to
reaches,
highlight
right?
this,
So
if we were to
all
make a
of these.
list of all of those candidates, all those people who were crowned
Sorry about that,
and
guys.
crucified,
All of these
there's
values,
exactly
okay?
one person
So
on that
again,
list, and that's Jesus of Nazareth.
It's going
If there
to
are other
be
people that
all
were
the
crowned and
values
crucified, and
that
that
go
may have
from
been the case,
7
but
to
nobody ever wrote about it.
2070
And so,
going this
what's the
direction,
probability that
okay?
it's
'Cause
not
all
Jesus
the LED
when you have this
bulbs expected
unique
to burn out before
combination of
reaching that
sufferings that you have nail wounds in the feet
2070 days.
and in the hands, a
So I
pierced
got
side, evidence that he carried the cross, that he was
plus
nailed to the cross, that he was crowned with
2.35
thorns, that he was
plus
punched in the face.
13.5.
All of this is here,
That's gonna
and then
be
and then you pile on other things like
16%.
pollen
Okay.
that
Now,
that
here
is
it says what portion
consonant
of
with the flora that
incense-
blossoms between April and May
Oh
in
my
within a
expected,
radius of I think
so
5
that's
kilometers to
and then,
Jerusalem,
are expected to burn out
and then
before
you
reaching
have
90 days.
soil.
This is a
So
very
that's the second
elaborate
bulb right
kind of
here.
hoax.
Yes, no, I want
And
to
a hoax
shake
that
this guy's
cannot
hand.
be-
Like,
Right,
if
that's
this,
right.
yeah, it's like, who is this guy? Like, this guy
Forget the
needs-
guy on the
Yeah.
shroud.
Let's
Who's
worship
that
him.
guy?
Like, absolutely.
Yeah, if it's a
100.
fake, we need to like
Okay, days
develop
as a mean,
a
and I'm
following
going
of
my
whoever
standard
faked it.
deviation to
Yeah.
10.
Oh,
to
yeah.
some degree, because he's a genius.
You know, it's beyond
1, 2,
genius. So
3,
just to
1,
give an
2, 3.
example
So
of this,
again,
like,
90 days
there's
gonna be
soil.
less than,
There's soil
that's
on the
90,
feet and
that's
knees
80,
and
that's
nose.
70.
It's terrible to
So
think about what that
again,
implies
we're
for
dealing
the Via
with
Crucis.
what
Like when he
proportion
fell
of the bulbs
flat to
are
his
expected to
face,
burn out
and some
before
75 to
reaching 90 days.
125 pounds came
Again,
crashing down
this is going
on a
to
head
be-
crowned with thorns. So the forensic doctors don't agree on much,
This
but
is
they
my
agree that these
34.
thorns penetrate through the
This is
skin
my
to the bony plate
13.5,
below.
this is my
And,
2.35,
and so
this is 0.15.
that on the
So
exactly
again,
amen
the
to that.
same amount
But
gonna
from a scientific
add
point of view,
of all
we
of
can
these
study this soil that's on the feet,
percentages. So
knee, and
0.15
nose and
plus
determine its chemical
2.35
composition.
plus
We know that it's calcium
13.5.
carbonate with
So
a
again, it's
touch
also
of strontium,
16%,
and we
okay?
know
It's
further
also one
it's
standard deviation less.
its crystalline
that,
structure
okay?
to be travertine aragonite, which is an extremely rare
question
crystalline
14.
structure, and yet, according to one geologist, it
And,
matches the soil of the grottos
apparel
of
company
Jerusalem like
manufactures
a
pants.
fingerprint,
Below
she
is
says.
the height data
And so,
that the
again, if
company
it
has
is
collected about
fabricated
their
in France
client
in the
base.
Middle Ages,
Compare the mean
what in
and
the
standard
world is it
deviation of the
doing
data
with
set. So,
soil from Palestine
we are
there,
going to
right
use
on
our
the,
calculator
precisely in those areas
in this case.
where you'd have
Uh-oh.
contact with the ground?
Let me get it
And
back
so
up.
it's the cumulative force of all of these different elements. I don't think it's any one thing that kind of like hammers it home. Sure, some are more important than others. Some elements are more important than others. But it really is the bringing together
so
the
calculators right here.
convergent evidence that
All right,
is
so we're
again and
gonna
again
go to
consonant
stat
with
and
what
our
we know
data
from
edit
Scripture
and put
and
our
what has
data
been passed
in.
down and
So
received by our
first
tradition.
it's
Who's the leading
66.7.
academic that would call this into question? And what does he
So let
say
me
in
pause the
response
video
to
for the
this?
Ways we can
All right,
reach that
so the data
conclusion.
is
It's simply
in.
that with the data
gonna press
that was
enter,
used in
enter,
1988, it
then
doesn't bring you
stack,
to this conclusion. In other words, it's a
go to
non
top,
sequitur, right? You would need to
first option.
do it again, but it does leave
All
open
right.
the question. So it may be the case
it
it we
says
like maybe
that,
tomorrow,
again, your mean
and this would
is
this wouldn't be
The
a problem. Some
X
people have
with
pretended
the
that
line on the top,
Christians are out there saying that the case for
64.84,
Christianity rests upon the authenticity of the shroud. Like, we would sleep easy tonight if we got a new test saying, hey, you know what, the shroud is medieval, and it doesn't tell us anything about the sufferings. I think that would be kind of unfortunate. Like, I'm glad that there's
no
X-
way you would sleep easy if that was discovered, especially given what you've just shared about the pollen and the soil.
Okay, fair enough. I would be disappointed, but that is to say, it wouldn't shake my. Who was there? Right, Mary Magdalene gets up early, but not early enough. Right, she's late. She slept in. He's gone. The tomb is empty, and so the shroud becomes the silent witness to that event, which I think is amazing because, of course, when she goes to the tomb, I know we call it an empty tomb, but what you read about is that it's not empty. In fact, it's what they find there, that when they find it, the way that they find it, they begin to believe. And so I think it's so powerful that in John 20, verse 8, it says, John saw and believed. And this is why I want to take him by the lapels and be like, slap him across the cheeks a little bit. What did you see? So that you believed. This is the first distinctive Christian faith attested anywhere in the scriptures. And it's
why can't that just mean he saw an empty tomb?
Well, what you described, can we pull that up actually? Because that's worth talking about. This is such a good question.
Oh, you'll look up the scripture?
Yeah, let's read that because I think this has not been given nearly enough attention in the scholarly literature and also with regard to shroud studies. And so I'm glad for the question. I'm just going to pull up my Bible here.
Now,
and,
next question.
I'll check it out in Greek.
And just for those who are watching right now, if you're a local supporter, go to
the
mattfrad.locals.com. We've got a private chat going on, so you can join that and ask questions. And I will be sure to ask Father your questions at some point in the episode.
0.7% of the
Do you want me to ask some of this, or have you already looked it up? I don't want to.
Yeah, no. I'm ready. So this is John chapter 20, and this we know well because it's what we proclaim on Easter Sunday. It's the first day of the week. Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb early while it's still dark and sees that the stone's been taken away, and so she goes and tells Simon Peter and the beloved disciple, that's John, and says, they've taken away the Lord. He's not in the tomb. I don't know where they laid him. So Peter and John go running. And in verse 4, it says they're running together, but John goes faster. I guess Peter is a little older, a little slow, maybe a little extra pounds on the gut. I don't know. But he doesn't get there first. John does. I love this detail in verse 5.
Now,
John bends down and says he stoops. He stoops, and the reason this is significant is because it coincides with what we know from archaeology in first century tombs.
Interesting.
There's a stairwell down that leads to an antechamber, and then against the wall, like on a shelf, much like in the catacombs if you've been there, you'll see that's where the body would be lie. And so Simon Peter goes in first. But first, it's John who sees from a distance the linen cloths. That's the word that I'm reading from the ESV. If you get into different translations, you're going to get different vocabulary here. But the linen cloths, notice the S at the end. It's because in the...
So read it from the scriptures. It says what?
In verse 5, and stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths.
Next question.
So it's blepe kemena ta othonia. So he sees the othonia. That's a neuter plural, and that's why we add S to the it's burial cloths or linen cloths. And the question is, what in the world was that? Especially since in the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we get a different word. We get the word sindon, which is shroud, like a long sheet that covers. So it's a sense he doesn't go in, but he gets low because now he gets a good angle to see deep inside, and what he sees from a distance is this linen cloth. Okay, that's interesting, but what happens next? Simon goes in, like I can just imagine John saying, "After you, Holy Father," like he waited for Peter, and now Peter steps down the threshold of where the stone would have been rolled away into the antechamber, and he tells us what he sees coming into the tomb. He saw the linen cloths. That's the second mention of this word othonia.
So now,
and look at this. He saw the linen cloths lying there. In other translations, it adds funny words like lying on the ground. But I'm here in the Greek, and I can tell you that it does nothing of the sort. It just says, Theore ta othonia kemena. He saw the linen cloths lying. And it's also interesting to note that he changed the verb to see. In English, we're going to get 3 times he saw, and he saw. But in John's language, he changes vocabulary, and I think that's intentional. It seems that there's a crescendo in light. He's seeing, but we're seeing more and more. So in the first moment, what does Peter see extra that John didn't see? Well, he sees the linen cloths lying and the face cloth, that's the sudarium, which had been on Jesus' head, it tells us, not lying with the linen cloths, that's a third mention in 3 verses of the same exact word, Othonia, but folded up in a separate place. And you're like, come on, John, there are 1,000 details I wish I could know about the Passion of Christ.
17.
Like, how big were the thorns? Where did they pierce him in the side? How many scourge marks? But it's like relegated to a subordinate clause, and then he keeps on going. But boy, when it's time to tell you about the dirty laundry in the tomb, like he's going on and on about it. And that got to catch your attention. Like, what is the purpose? What is the purpose here? Where is he going with this discourse? And finally, in verse 8, he comes to the climactic conclusion to say, then the other theorized that in addition to the sindon, which is that long sheet that kind of folds above and below the body, you have these other strips that bring together at certain points and contain the body. This is really interesting if you know John 11, because that's when Jesus calls Lazarus out of the tomb, and he gives him a command. You remember seeing certain details that are fuzzy and at a distance. Then we come up close and personal, and then we get even then we get the vision of faith, but then it climaxes in an encounter when Mary Magdalene encounters the Lord, and that's where our faith journey ends too. It's like, come press and probe, like study the shroud, but don't be unbelieving, but believe, see with faith.
Holy mackerel! Okay, so I know you want to draw out a lot of things from Scripture. But can we get to some questions?
You bet.
But before we do that, can I tell people to go check out hallow.com/Matt? It is the #1 Christian. Matt Fradd. I think Matt works as well. HALLOW.com/Matt Fradd. You're right, Thursday. Matt Fradd. Check him out because it's the #1 Catholic app on the interwebs. I think it might be the #1 Christian app. Don't quote me. It's a bloody fantastic app, and it'll help you to pray. And I know a lot of people for your New Year's resolution said you'd like to do that more. What's cool about Hallow is it'll help you do that. And it's really well produced. And if you go to hallow.com/Matt Fradd, the link is in the description below, and sign up there, you get a 3-month free trial, which is just ridiculous. So after the end of those 3 months, if you don't agree with me that it's as good as I'm saying, you can unsubscribe and you won't pay a cent. But it'll help you. It'll lead you through the rosary. It has nighttime stories, bedtime stories you can listen to. It has stories for your children that you can play for them at night. It really is absolutely excellent. And 100% Catholic. So if you want to pray the rosary, if you want to learn how to meditate in a Catholic fashion, please check it out. Hallow.com/Matt Fradd. Click the link in the description below. Sign up there. That way they know that I sent you, and you'll get those 3 months for free. All right, can I
sign up on the website so that you, if you, I know a lot of people in the communities don't want to give more money to Apple or Google than they need to. So if you sign up on the website, then Apple and Google don't get a cut through the payment processing on your phone.
90.5.
Thank you. All right, so Heidi, thanks for being a local supporter, says, who is dragging their feet on the proper dating of it? Who has to approve it? So I think that goes back to the question of, okay, we did carbon dating, but it was on so if a new carbon dating thing would actually prove it, whose permission do we got to get?
Right, so as of 1983, the shroud was bequeathed from the royal family to the person of John Paul II because he is the successor of Peter. So it is, as of 1983, that's like recent history. That's like yesterday in the grand scheme. Yeah. So now it is the property of Francis. So, of course, he has a delegate in Turin. It's the archbishop there in Turin. And he also has, people under him that tend to the nitty-gritty. But I think what would need to happen is that the scientific community would have to reach a kind of consensus in order to suggest, like, hey, this is not just what needs to be done, but the exact way in which it needs to be orchestrated, so that the community at large can be confident that the results are credible. And so after the fiasco of 1988, nobody's like just itching to do this. And I just want to say that we're in a great place right now to talk about the Shroud. And we need more people. I love what I do. I love that I get to go around the world talking about the Shroud, and I have in China and Hong Kong and Singapore and the Philippines and throughout Europe and here in the States. But I wish I didn't have to in a way. Like, I wish there were other people that would get on board and do this. So thank you, by the way, for the platform to share this. But people need to know that they can get educated on this. Do a postgraduate certificate in Shroud Studies from Othonia. It's in Spanish, it's in Italian, and it's in English. And learn about it, share about it, bring it to your parish, bring it to your catechism classes. People need to hear this. You never know who can benefit